is hidden knowledge about energy manipulation that only the chosen few of the 33rd degree from the most secret societies have mastered. Manly P. Hall revealed these forbidden techniques in his lecture during the 1973 Scottish Rite ceremony, where he was recognized as a 33-degree Mason 47 years after writing The Secret Teachings of All Ages. The air you breathe is not empty space. It is the densest and most complex magnetic field known, where each planet emits its unique frequency through this invisible matrix. Egyptian priests measured these fields millennia ago for healing. Pythagoras recorded how temple geometric solids, cubes, octahedrons, dodecahedrons, emitted specific therapeutic frequencies. Franz Mesmer demonstrated that people forming circles around magnetized water in his tank created functional human batteries. Walter John Kilner photographed the etheric field extending 3 to 5 feet from the physical body, up to 1.5 meters of invisible protection. Your moral conduct is not religious decree. Every lie, every selfish act, every emotional outburst tears verifiable holes in this magnetic shield. What you call evil is beneficial energy failing to manifest properly. Alcohol, narcotics, and destructive emotions pierce your natural magnetic protection. 17th century Rosicrucians knew personal field integrity determines health, longevity, and the evolution of consciousness.
There exists a knowledge about the manipulation of vital energy that only initiates of the 33rd degree of the most ancient orders possess complete access to. This is not a metaphor or a symbol, it is a precise science of controlling the magnetic fields that govern human existence. Those who master these principles manage to maintain perfect health for decades, influence events through directed energetic emanations, and access states of consciousness that common humanity considers impossible. Every human body exists at the center of a pulsating magnetic field that responds instantaneously to thoughts, emotions, and moral choices. The ancient Egyptian priests knew every detail of this field. They knew how to strengthen it, how to direct it, and how to use it to heal or to destroy. This knowledge was considered too dangerous for the masses. For millennia, it remained guarded in sealed chambers beneath the pyramids, transmitted only through initiations that required decades of preparation. What humanity calls evil simply represents the absence or distortion of the benevolent energy trying to manifest itself. When the personal magnetic field maintains its natural integrity, destructive thoughts cannot form themselves in consciousness. Violent impulses dissolve before gaining strength. Envy, hatred, and greed, all of these forces arise only when the protective magnetic shield has been compromised by violations of the universal energetic laws. Pythagoras was initiated into the magnetic mysteries during 22 years of study in the temples of Egypt. When he returned to the Greek world, he tried to establish schools where this knowledge could be transmitted gradually. He taught that perfect geometric forms carry healing magnetic fields inherent to their structure. A perfectly constructed dodecahedron emanates a frequency that harmonizes disturbances in the human field. A precisely aligned cube stabilizes chaotic energies. These were not abstract concepts. They were practical tools of energetic manipulation. After the destruction of the Pythagorean schools, the knowledge was fragmented. Pieces were preserved by the Gnostics, by the Essenes, and by the mystery schools of Eleusis. The builders of the Gothic cathedrals knew secrets about how sacred geometry amplifies magnetic fields. Why do you think people report spontaneous healings in certain sacred places? The architecture was designed to create magnetic vortices that realign the damaged human field. The medieval alchemists were not seeking to transform physical lead into gold. That was an allegory to protect the true work, the transmutation of the human magnetic field from a dense and corrupted state to a refined and luminous state. Each alchemical operation corresponds to a specific technique of energetic manipulation. The Nigredo, the albedo, and the rubedo. These are stages of purification and intensification of the personal magnetic field until reaching what they called the glorious body. Franz Mesmer rediscovered only a fraction of this knowledge, but it was sufficient to perform what seemed like miracles. His magnetic tanks created an amplified collective field where impossible healings became routine. People formed human chains, magnetized water served as a conductor, and the group field reached intensities that dissolved energetic blockages accumulated over decades. The medical elite of the time panicked. If the public understood that disease results primarily from magnetic disturbances, the entire medical system based on chemical interventions would collapse. The air that you breathe at this moment is saturated with solar magnetic energy. Each inhalation pulls this energy into your personal field. The initiates know how to increase the absorption of this energy through specific breathing techniques combined with geometric visualizations. They understand that the seasons of the year represent variations in the magnetic quality of solar energy. Spring carries frequencies of renewal. Summer carries frequencies of expansion. Autumn carries frequencies of consolidation. Winter carries frequencies of introspection and purification. Have you ever wondered why certain people seem to drain your energy while others instantly elevate your state of mind? The human magnetic field extends between 3 and 5 meters beyond the physical body. When two fields meet, an automatic energetic exchange occurs. Integral and harmonious fields induce harmony in nearby fields. Corrupted and chaotic fields attempt to drain energy from more organized fields. The initiates learn to seal their fields, to create impenetrable magnetic barriers, and to consciously direct their emanations. The orders that preserve this complete knowledge have operated in the shadows for centuries. 33rd degree Masons study texts about magnetism that the public will never see. Certain Rosicrucian lineages maintain practices of magnetic manipulation transmitted orally since the Middle Ages. Even more secret groups, whose names cannot be mentioned, guard the final keys to complete mastery of the human magnetic field. The question you should be asking is not whether this is true, but why this knowledge has been so carefully hidden. The answer is simple and disturbing. A humanity conscious of its inherent magnetic power could not be controlled. People who understand how to strengthen and direct their magnetic fields become immune to manipulation. They do not become ill easily. They do not age at the normal rate. They develop capacities that defy the accepted limitations of the human condition. This is exactly why this knowledge remains restricted to the highest degrees of initiatic orders, while common humanity continues ignorant of its true energetic potential. Magnetism, considered in ancient traditions as a sacred science, was associated from early times with Egypt and Greece. Authors like Manly P. Hall mention that, in these contexts, it was understood primarily as a healing resource, and that Pythagoras would have inherited this knowledge. Hieratic texts mention the Neteru, deities of ancient Egypt, associated with the transmission of sacred knowledge to the first initiates. In later esoteric traditions, this teaching was related to the concept of Sikkim, symbolically understood as the vital force that animates matter. Over time, part of this knowledge was forgotten and taken up again in different traditions, such as among Arabs, Rosicrucians, and alchemists. In traditions linked to Egypt and transmitted by Pythagoras, there was talk of the existence of therapeutic practices based on the contemplation of geometric solids. Cubes, octahedrons, and other perfect forms were placed on pedestals for the sick to observe them, believing that their symmetry transmitted order and harmony to the human magnetic field. For Hall, each form in nature, natural or artificial, possesses an energy field, and by fixing the mind on perfect proportions, the individual would benefit from this balance. Hall describes that each human being is surrounded by a magnetic field or etheric atmosphere, an egg of energy that protects and sustains health. This field is fed by solar currents that enter through the top of the head, travel through the body, and are released again through the lower centers. The integrity of this flow is seen as essential for physical and moral vitality. Although esoteric traditions have associated Egyptian symbols with this process, Hall does not specifically identify the Eye of Horus as a magnetic diagram, but emphasizes the relationship between solar energy, the human body, and inner harmony. Imhotep is remembered as an architect and sage, and centuries later, he was venerated as a patron of medicine. In his reading, Hall does not describe the pyramids as magnetic machines, but sees magnetism as a universal principle present in all forms of nature, from the smallest atom to the great celestial bodies. For him, each form, natural or created by man, possesses its own magnetic field, and the contemplation of perfect proportion transmits harmony to the human being. Thus, the monumental architecture of Egypt can be interpreted, in a symbolic perspective, as an expression of proportion and subtle forces. But Hall does not affirm that the pyramids were designed to amplify magnetic fields. When Pythagoras arrived in Egypt around the middle of the 6th century BCE, some traditions report that he faced initial difficulties in being accepted by the priests. Over time, he was admitted as a neophyte and, according to symbolic accounts, would have gone through long initiation processes. In these traditions, the Egyptians did not see numbers merely as mathematical abstractions, but also as fundamental principles that structure reality. It was said, for example, that the number 3 vibrated differently from 5, and that 7 possessed a singular quality. Numerical combinations were interpreted as capable of generating harmonic or dissonant fields. Pythagoras also learned that music could be understood as an audible expression of cosmic and energetic laws. Each note would be associated with a precise frequency. Certain harmonic progressions were considered beneficial to human balance, while others could weaken it. Esoteric traditions affirm that the Egyptians preserved reserved musical scales, different from those used publicly, capable of inducing altered states of consciousness through resonance with energetic centers of the body. It is believed that part of this knowledge was lost with the destruction of the Library of Alexandria, an episode surrounded by different historical and legendary versions. After leaving Egypt, Pythagoras founded his school in Crotona with the intention of gradually transmitting this knowledge to the West. However, he faced opposition, and his community ended up being attacked. Many disciples were dispersed or killed. Thus, according to later traditions, only fragments of this knowledge would have survived through followers like Philolaus and Archytas, while the practical essence was lost. During the Middle Ages, Arab authors preserved and reinterpreted parts of this legacy. Jabir ibn Hayyan, Geber, described in alchemical language the processes of transmutation linked to the human vital field. Terms like philosophical mercury and red sulfur were understood by esoteric currents as allusions to energetic polarities. Al-Razi, an influential physician, was also associated in later readings with accounts of treatments with magnets, although such practices are not clearly documented in the original texts. During the Crusades, the tradition spread that the Knights Templar had found hidden manuscripts when excavating in the ruins of the Temple of Solomon. According to esoteric versions, this knowledge would have provided them with unusual power and influence. The persecution ordered by Philip IV in 1307, which led to the arrest and execution of Jacques de Molay, is interpreted by some symbolic narratives, not only as a political or financial matter, but also as an attempt to prevent the disclosure of knowledge considered secret. In the Renaissance, this symbolic thread resurfaced in initiatic societies. The figure of Christian Rosenkreuz, real or allegorical, came to represent the recomposition of dispersed fragments of knowledge. In the Rosicrucian manifestos, there is talk of a universal medicine capable of restoring and prolonging life. This medicine was understood not as a material substance, but as a method of intensification and purification of the person's vital or magnetic field, leading to the so-called incorruptible body, an ideal state in which the organizational integrity of life would be maintained. The air that surrounds every living being is not a passive mixture of gases waiting to be breathed. It is the densest and most complex magnetic field accessible to the human being, a living energetic matrix where each molecule vibrates with coded information from the entire solar system. The initiates of the 33rd degree know this fundamental truth. Breathing is the act of magnetic communion with the cosmos. Each inhalation pulls into the body not only chemical elements, but the entire spectrum of planetary emanations processed by Earth's atmosphere. Consider the evidence hidden in plain sight. Television signals cross your living room at this moment, coming from dozens of transmission towers. Radio waves from thousands of different stations occupy the same space without colliding or corrupting one another. Cell phone conversations, internet data, and satellite communications. Billions of gigabytes of information flowing through what you call empty air. If air can simultaneously carry this astronomical amount of coded electromagnetic information, why would it be incapable of carrying the natural magnetic emanations of the Sun, the Moon, Jupiter, and Saturn? Nikola Tesla partially understood this reality when he stated that the atmosphere contains unlimited energy waiting to be accessed. But Tesla focused only on the electrical aspect, ignoring the more subtle magnetic dimensions that the ancients knew. Earth's atmosphere functions as a cosmic processor, receiving raw radiation from celestial sources and transforming it into frequencies that living organisms can absorb and utilize. Without this atmospheric processing, solar energy would instantly destroy all life on Earth. With it, this same energy becomes the primary magnetic food of every living cell. Mercury governs the emanations related to communication and movement. When Mercury is in certain positions relative to Earth, its specific magnetic influence intensifies in the atmosphere. Sensitive people experience mental acceleration, restlessness, and a need to express themselves. This is not astrological superstition. It is magnetic physics that official science does not yet possess instruments refined enough to measure. Venus emanates frequencies that directly affect the magnetic fields related to attraction and harmony. Mars projects emanations that activate fields linked to action and conflict. The ancient initiates precisely mapped how each celestial body contributes to the atmospheric magnetic symphony. They knew that Saturn emits frequencies that promote structuring and limitation. Jupiter emanates fields that induce expansion and growth. The Moon modulates all these influences, functioning as a gigantic transformer that adapts planetary emanations to terrestrial biological rhythms. The lunar phases do not affect only the tides. They modify the density and magnetic quality of the atmosphere in ways that directly impact human, animal, and plant behavior. The seasons of the year reveal another aspect of this hidden reality. Spring does not happen because Earth tilts toward the sun. That is only the superficial mechanics. Spring manifests when the magnetic quality of solar radiation changes to frequencies that activate growth and renewal. The air literally carries magnetic instructions that tell each seed when to germinate, each tree when to sprout, and each animal when to mate. Winter occurs when these frequencies change to patterns that induce dormancy and conservation. Plants demonstrate this truth daily. They do not possess a nervous system, but they respond instantaneously to changes in the atmospheric magnetic field. Sunflowers track the sun not through simple phototropism, but because they follow the solar magnetic gradient through the atmosphere. Trees communicate through magnetic emanations carried by the air, alerting the entire forest about pests or diseases before the attack spreads. What biologists call volatile compounds are actually modulations of the local atmospheric magnetic field. When you breathe, you are not just exchanging oxygen for carbon dioxide. You are literally downloading cosmic magnetic programming into your personal field. Take a deep breath now. At this moment, energy that left the sun 8 minutes ago is entering your body, already processed and coded by Earth's magnetosphere, by the ionosphere, by the stratosphere, until it reaches you in a form that your cells can interpret and utilize. Exhale. You have just returned to the atmospheric field, your own magnetic signature, which now mixes with billions of others, creating the collective field that we all share. The Taoist masters called this breathing the chi of heaven and earth. The yogis spoke of prana permeating the air. The alchemists referred to the spiritus mundi, the spirit of the world dissolved in the atmosphere. All were describing the same reality using different languages. The air is a living, intelligent magnetic field, constantly responding to the emanations of every star, planet, living being, and even thoughts strong enough to create magnetic ripples. The definitive proof is in the very existence of life. Anaerobic organisms can survive without oxygen, but no known organism survives without exposure to the atmospheric magnetic field. Experiments with chambers of total magnetic isolation show that cells begin to degenerate within hours. Animals become disoriented, then catatonic. Plants wilt regardless of available water or nutrients. Remove the magnetic field, and life collapses, not from lack of magnetism itself, but because the organism loses connection with the informational matrix that coordinates all vital processes. Walter John Kilner was not a mystic or spiritualist when he began his experiments at St. Thomas Hospital in London in 1908. He was a respected physician, head of the electrotherapy department, interested in developing new diagnostic methods. His discovery happened almost by accident. Experimenting with dicyanine, a dye used in photography, he noticed that by looking through screens treated with this substance, he could perceive a luminosity around his patients' bodies. It was not imagination or optical illusion. It was a visible, measurable, and photographable structure. What Kilner documented fundamentally contradicts the established medical view. The human energy field is not a uniform and amorphous emanation. It possesses 3 distinct layers, each vibrating at a different frequency. The first layer, which he called the etheric double, extends approximately 6 millimeters beyond the skin, appearing as a dark band in photographs. The second layer, the inner aura, projects about 10 centimeters, showing density variations that correspond to the state of internal organs. The third, the outer aura, can extend up to 5 meters in individuals with particularly intense fields. Kilner discovered that diseases appear first as distortions in these layers before manifesting physically. Tumors created dark spots in the field months before becoming palpable. Infections appeared as turbulence in the inner aura days before the first symptoms. Psychiatric problems manifested as ruptures in the outer aura, explaining why certain mental patients seem to drain energy from those nearby. Their damaged fields literally drain magnetism from intact fields around them. Harold Saxton Burr took this investigation further at Yale with more sophisticated instrumentation. Between 1932 and 1973, he measured what he called L fields, life fields, in thousands of organisms. Burr discovered that every living being exists within an electromagnetic mold that precedes and governs its physical form. Salamanders possess the complete field of a limb before regeneration begins. Seeds carry the electromagnetic field of the adult plant before germination. Human embryos present the field of a complete body when they are still just a cluster of undifferentiated cells. Solar energy enters the human body through a specific channel that Hindus incorrectly call the crown chakra. It is not a chakra in the popularized mystical sense. It is a literal opening in the magnetic field, a vortex in the shape of an inverted funnel with approximately 15 centimeters in diameter at its upper mouth. This vortex spins clockwise in the northern hemisphere and counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere, following the same magnetic dynamic that creates hurricanes and determines the direction of water rotation going down the drain. The energy descends through a central tube that runs along the entire spine, not inside it, but about 2 centimeters in front. This tube has 7 main distribution points where energy branches out to feed specific organs and systems. The first point, at the base of the skull, governs the central nervous system. The second, at the throat, regulates communication and metabolism. The third, at the center of the chest, controls circulation and immune response. The fourth, at the solar plexus, coordinates digestion and emotional processing. The fifth, below the navel, manages reproduction and creativity. The sixth, at the perineum, anchors the field to terrestrial magnetism. The seventh, at the coccyx, processes and eliminates stagnant energy. Each organ maintains its own magnetic subfield operating as a semi-independent organism. The heart generates the most powerful field, about 5,000 times more intense than the brain. This cardiac field pulses rhythmically, creating waves that propagate through the entire body and beyond it. When the cardiac field is coherent, beating in regular harmonic rhythm, all other fields in the body synchronize with it. When it is chaotic, this disharmony propagates systemically, creating the conditions for disease. Morality reveals itself here not as an arbitrary religious imposition, but as a maintenance manual for the magnetic field. Each lie told creates a dissonance in the laryngeal field that can be measured with sensitive magnetometers. The dissonance does not disappear when the lie ends. It creates a distortion pattern that persists, accumulating with each subsequent falsehood until the field in that region becomes permanently compromised. People who lie chronically develop thyroid problems, vocal cord nodules, and metabolic dysfunctions, all direct consequences of the corrupted magnetic field in the throat region. Explosive anger tears temporary holes in the solar plexus field. If you could see a person in rage magnetically, you would see their field literally fragmenting, with jets of energy firing uncontrollably in all directions. This dispersed energy does not return. It is permanently lost, leaving the field weakened. Chronic anger keeps these holes permanently open, allowing parasitic magnetic influences to enter the personal field. It is no coincidence that constantly angry people develop ulcers, liver problems, and diabetes. Organs in the solar plexus region fail when the protective field is compromised. Toxic substances do not damage the body only chemically. Alcohol creates a condition that trained clairvoyants describe as auric porosity. The field becomes permeable to external influences. Heavy narcotics can tear the field so severely that pieces of it separate completely, floating disconnected around the person. These people become literally soulless in the magnetic sense. Parts of their vital field are disconnected from the integrated whole. Recovery from addictions requires not only chemical detoxification, but the laborious reconstruction of the fragmented magnetic field. Every atom in the universe pulses with its own distinctive magnetic field, from hydrogen vibrating at 1420 MHz to heavy elements like uranium, which emanate complex frequencies in the terahertz range. This is not scientific poetry. It is the fundamental architecture of reality that alchemists understood when they spoke of the signature of things. A stone on the beach is not inert matter waiting to be moved. It is a magnetic vortex vibrating at specific frequencies determined by its mineral composition, its geological history, and its exposure to cosmic fields over millions of years. Crystals form when mineral magnetic fields align in geometric patterns of maximum harmony. Quartz grows in perfect hexagons because that is the configuration where the magnetic fields of silicon and oxygen reach ideal resonance. Amethyst acquires its violet color when traces of iron in quartz vibrate at specific frequencies that our eyes interpret as purple. Each crystal is a natural magnetic processing device, receiving, storing, and retransmitting specific frequencies. The Atlanteans knew this. The Lemurians built all their technology on this principle. A seemingly simple potato contains billions of microscopic magnetic fields, each cell maintaining its own energetic integrity while participating in the greater magnetic symphony of the tuber. When you cut a potato, you are not just dividing matter, you are rupturing a complex magnetic matrix. The cells on the cut surfaces immediately begin to reorganize their fields, trying to restore the lost integrity. This is why cut potatoes heal their surfaces with a protective layer. They are rebuilding the violated magnetic shield. True nutrition completely transcends the chemical model of calories and nutrients. When you ingest food, you are absorbing its complete magnetic field, including all the energetic information that food accumulated during its growth. An apple grown in rich soil, under full sun, without pesticides, carries an intact and complex magnetic field. Each bite transfers this magnetic integrity to your body. An apple grown in exhausted soil, bombarded with chemicals and artificially ripened, possesses a fragmented and chaotic magnetic field. Ingesting it introduces magnetic distortion directly into your system. The ancient initiates knew the difference between living food and dead food in magnetic terms. Sprouted grains vibrate with actively expanding magnetic fields. Freshly harvested vegetables maintain their pulsating fields for hours or days after harvest. Meat from animals raised in natural conditions carries coherent magnetic fields, but industrial processing systematically destroys these fields. Pasteurization not only kills bacteria, it collapses the magnetic field of milk. Food irradiation not only sterilizes, it completely shatters the energetic matrix. Microwaves not only heat, they invert the magnetic polarity of water molecules, creating what sensitives describe as energetically dead food. The alchemists dedicated themselves obsessively to transmutation because they understood that raising the magnetic frequency of a substance transformed its fundamental properties. What they called multiplication was not increasing quantity, but intensifying the magnetic field until a small portion carried the potency of a larger amount. The philosopher's stone was not an object, but a state of magnetic coherence so perfect that it induced instant organization in any chaotic field it came into contact with. Projection meant extending this coherent field to transmute substances of lower vibration. Each kingdom of nature operates in its characteristic magnetic range. Minerals vibrate at the lowest and most stable frequencies. Plants operate 1 octave above, with fields that fluctuate following circadian and seasonal rhythms. Animals maintain even more complex fields, modulated by emotions and instincts. Humans possess the unique capacity to consciously modify their magnetic frequency, being able to descend to mineral density or elevate themselves to frequencies that the ancients associated with angelic states. Modern civilization has created an unprecedented magnetic crisis in human history. Every electronic device generates an artificial electromagnetic field that interferes with natural biological fields. Wi-Fi operates at 2.4 gigahertz, exactly the frequency that agitates water molecules, the same frequency used in microwave ovens. Cell phones pressed against the head bombard the brain's magnetic field with pulsed radiation. Televisions and monitors emit fields that literally hypnotize the nervous system, inducing trance states where critical capacity diminishes and suggestibility increases. But electromagnetic pollution is only part of the problem. The modern social structure has been architected to systematically fragment the human magnetic field. Work environments with fluorescent lighting that pulses at 60 Hertz desynchronize natural biological rhythms. Concrete and steel architecture creates Faraday cages that block contact with Earth's magnetic field. Synthetic clothing generates static electricity that disrupts the auric field. Shoes with rubber soles completely isolate the body from the Earth, preventing the discharge of stagnant energy. The monetary economy represents perhaps the most insidious violation of natural magnetic laws. Fiat money, notes without backing in real value, is literally anti-magnetic, representing debt and absence instead of substance and presence. Each transaction with virtual money creates a magnetic deficit that must be compensated with real vital energy. People exchange decades of their vital force for numbers on screens, numbers that possess no magnetic existence, that cannot nourish, heal, or elevate. The system was designed to systematically drain human magnetism, converting it into an abstraction that benefits those who understand and manipulate these energetic dynamics. The universe operates by an absolute magnetic law that no philosophy, religion, or political system can alter. Intact fields naturally harmonize, and corrupted fields inevitably generate conflict. This is not a moral or spiritual truth, it is pure magnetic mechanics. When two coherent magnetic fields meet, they enter into constructive resonance, mutually amplifying their organization and potency. When fragmented or distorted fields interact, they create patterns of destructive interference that further degrade both fields. Every war, every conflict, and every collective mental illness results from this fundamental magnetic incompatibility. World peace will not come through treaties, agreements, or political changes. It will come only when a critical mass of human beings restores the integrity of their personal magnetic fields. A single individual with a perfectly coherent field magnetically affects hundreds of people around them. 10 people with aligned fields create a magnetic vortex that can harmonize an entire community. 1,000 people maintaining simultaneous magnetic integrity generate a field capable of dissolving patterns of violence in an entire city. The initiates have always known this. This is why monasteries and temples were strategically positioned, not for spiritual isolation, but to create magnetic nodes of planetary harmonization. Human evolution has never been about developing more sophisticated technology or accumulating more intellectual knowledge. Evolution means exclusively the progressive refinement of the personal magnetic field through conscious choices aligned with universal energetic laws. Each act of integrity, each truth told when lying would be easier. Each gesture of generosity when selfishness would be more profitable. Each moment of courage when fear paralyzes permanently strengthens the magnetic field. These fortifications are cumulative and transferable. The magnetic field you build in this existence becomes the starting point of the next. Those who systematically violate magnetic laws are not punished by some vengeful deity. They simply reap the automatic consequences of their degraded fields: disease, isolation, paranoia, and inability to experience elevated states of consciousness. What religions call hell is simply existing with a magnetic field so fragmented that only frequencies of suffering can penetrate it. What they call heaven is possessing a field so refined that it resonates only with frequencies of ecstasy and direct knowledge. The hidden controllers who manipulate civilization know these laws perfectly. They maintain their own fields through specific rituals, sacred geometries in their residences, and energetically intact food that the public does not even know exists. Simultaneously, they promote everything that fragments the magnetic field of the masses: entertainment that glorifies violence, denatured food, architecture that blocks natural energies, educational systems that suppress energetic knowledge, and medicine that treats symptoms while ignoring magnetic causes. But there exists a fundamental vulnerability in the control system. Anyone can immediately begin to rebuild their magnetic field, and once this process initiates with sincerity, it becomes exponentially self-reinforcing. First comes the perception that something is profoundly wrong with the presented reality. Then, the search for suppressed knowledge. Then, the first experiments with magnetic strengthening practices. Finally, the direct experience of states of consciousness that unequivocally confirm the magnetic nature of existence. You who have arrived here are not reading these words by accident. Magnetic fields attract through resonance. If this information resonates, it is because your field already vibrates partially at these frequencies, seeking confirmation and amplification. The question now is not whether you believe. It is whether you are willing to act on what your magnetic field already recognizes as truth. The path begins with the understanding that you are not a physical body that possesses an energy field. You are a complex magnetic field that temporarily organizes matter into human form. Each thought you allow, each emotion you cultivate, and each action you execute instantly modifies this field. There is no private thought. All mental content propagates magnetically, affecting fields around it. There is no isolated action. Each gesture creates ripples in the collective magnetic field that eventually return to the emitter amplified. Meditation emerges here not as an optional spiritual practice, but as a fundamental technology for the maintenance and amplification of the personal magnetic field. During deep meditative states, the human magnetic field synchronizes with the Schumann resonance, Earth's fundamental frequency, at 7.83 Hz. In this synchronization, an automatic reorganization of accumulated distortions occurs. Chaotic patterns dissolve. Breaches in the field begin to seal. Communication with intelligences that operate at higher frequencies becomes possible. All change begins with the understanding of your role as co-creator, and the only way to connect with this divine intelligence is through meditation.